is not an act of bravery, but for me to endure and do that which is infinitely more brave and wise. To follow God is an act of bravery. I'll give you another example. Say I was in a SWAT team and I'm the first in the door. If I'm the first in the door for the New World Order, I am risking my life for the New World Order. That is a risk, but it is not truly brave, because there is another option which requires more bravery, and that is to do the will of God. Therefore, to take the risk of a man of God gunning me down for the New World Order is a risk. It is risky business, but it is not true bravery, and it never will be. Everyone, so help me God, everyone who takes their side against me, even a little bit, so help me God, is a coward. With that being said, we all have choices. One doesn't have to be a coward forever. Right now, you are a coward. That's what you are. But you're not dead yet. The people who say it's never too late to do the right thing, they're wrong. When you're in hell, it is too late. You don't know when you're going to die. You could get in a car accident and die on the way home from gang stalking somebody. You never know. It is a foolish act to wait until you believe the time is right to repent. That is the act of a fool who is gambling with his soul. Not to mention setting a bad example for his or her children. Now let's look at this another way, shall we? For the sake of argument, I'm going to bring up something that I don't believe even for a moment. Let's say for the sake of argument there was no God, but a person believed that there was. It would still, everything would still be the same as far as the principle of cowardice. Because you believe in these principles that are real. It's not a matter of perspective. We can go on and on about why wrong is wrong, no matter if God exists or not. About how things affect people negatively. About how homosexuality is evil, whether or not the Bible is true. We can go on and on about these, but I've beat these dead horses over and over and over. So let us just summarize it by saying, if one believes that there is a God, whether or not there is a God, everything is still the same. They are a coward. Does a brave man drug an innocent man to maintain the order of a bunch of criminal eugenicists? Or does a coward? Does a brave man say, well, you know, I'm part of this gang, they'll punish me if I don't do it? Or does a coward? Does a brave man say, well, I'm in the military and they'll send me to the, bars or the barracks or whatever the fucking military prison is called? Or does a coward? Who helps pedophiles and eugenicists if not a coward? And that coward cannot redeem himself until he starts to do the right thing. He can say, well, I'm going to continue being a coward, but I'm going to give money to the poor. It doesn't work like that. That's the Freemasons' mistake. You can't live your life as a coward every day and give money to the poor or throw a bone to your victims and magically become brave. You're either a coward or you're not. And the longer you wait, the lower your rank is in heaven. If you've lived a long life of being a coward, and then magically You start doing the right thing when you're like 60 years old. Do you really think you deserve the same position in heaven as someone who endured their entire life? On the same token, it is better to be a peasant in heaven than to be the king of hell. Why do you think the devil, in many of these satanic books on satanic philosophy, goes on and on about how the mind can make heaven, can make hell into heaven? He tries to be God. He tries to play the role of God because deep down he really wants to be in heaven. But his complex kept him from it. His cowardice. The devil isn't just the great murderer, the biggest queer of all, the biggest feminist of all, the biggest baby killer of all, the biggest liar. He's also the biggest coward. Because he had such an important role, but he was too much of a coward to accept what he thought were the consequences if he continued to serve God. America is a nation of cowards using their own scale in a predominantly Christian society. The way most Americans behave, according to the Christian scale, is cowardly. Look how many of them sabotaged me. Look how few of them stood with me. One could argue, and the most correct argument would be, most correct observation would be that nobody stood with me. There was a bunch of wolves in sheep's clothes. That it was easy to isolate me in the land of the cowards. In a land of cowards, the brave man will always be king, spiritually, in reality, but according to the illusion, where positions are granted by fools who maintain a satanic eugenic system in the minds of inferior fools. The brave man will always be perceived by society as being one of the most outcasted and one of the lowest ranks, if you will, the lowest social status. Always. If that is the trend in society, then how could a brave man be given his rightful place? Who's going to give it to him? A bunch of cowards who have sworn their allegiance basically to the enemy, to the cowards, to the biggest, richest cowards of all? They're going to give him his credit? Magically, they're going to become brave and give him his credit. No. The more clever among them, notice I said clever, not wise, will secretly give him his credit. The wolves in sheep's clothes will give him his credit to a certain extent, but they don't want to overdo it because then it will start to sway the rest of the population once they see many people passionately giving him his credit. No, you cannot be the top martial artist in reality without being brave and without being shunned and without being denied your credit. It is impossible in the society that I live in right now, in America, in 2016, in 2015, going back to 1776. It is impossible, mark my words, impossible, to be the top martial artist and to be given your credit. Because the top martial artist is a brave man of honor. It is righteous indignation that allows him that place. And how could he possibly not use his position to do the right thing? How could he possibly be given the spotlight? How could he possibly be given his credit and the admiration of potential wives in a world of cowards who fear what will happen to them if they do the work of God and stand with the one man who is doing it. It is impossible. Controlled opposition will not give him his credit. The masses of cowards will not give him his credit. Those females who have accepted the philosophies of Satan and lowered themselves by default beneath Christian women wouldn't dream of giving him his credit. And I also say that it is impossible to be the top martial artist and not to yell. Let's think about that. Let's break that down for a second. It is impossible to be the top martial artist and not to yell. Now, some of you right away will say, that's not true. Well, let's start off on a very simple level. Number one, how many of you know what keying up means? Or saying, hiya, wassa? What did Bruce Lee do? I'm not saying that he was the top martial artist of his time. In fact, using my scale, he most certainly wasn't. But he was given his credit by the masses of cowards now, wasn't he? But what you will see is that this person will be in the habit of expressing himself using his righteous indignation in a way that is loud or yelling. Will the psychiatrist ever admit that? No. Why? Because mental health is the pseudoscience, the greater tree of pseudosciences of cowards. The cowards sewer pseudoscience. Fucking weak ass pussies. That's why I say I'm Heru and you're a bunch of bitches. Now let's break this down. I'm a Christian. My religion isn't Egypt. It is Christianity. Okay? So what am I referring to? I'm referring to that I am the higher self. I am a superior form of life because of my bravery and me doing the work of God, and that is what preoccupies me. That is the focus of my concentration. Doing the will of God. Flying high. Walking a higher path. Soaring through the heavens. Or moving with God. Now, what type of person does not move with God? Oh yeah, a fucking coward. Now, what is another word for a coward that begins with a B? Oh, yes. So, truly, I am Heru. And truly, you're a bunch of bitches. To this day, I get trolls who don't understand. What do the 5 animals from the 5 animal styles of Kung Fu have in common? All these animals wait until the best moment to strike, and they deliver a precise and deadly blow that is no more forceful than is necessary. They don't exert themselves to their maximum capacity. They do it just enough to get the job done. They don't fight recreationally. And they're concerned with being wounded because it will affect their future ability to hunt or to kill. The dragon strikes effectively, whether it's a Komodo dragon or a mythical one. It bites its prey, and its venomous saliva doesn't allow its prey to heal in most cases. Therefore, if its prey gets away temporarily, it can find it, it can chase it down and catch it later, dead from that wound. The panther springs into action and strikes, similar to the leopard, the mountain lion, the cheetah, and the jaguar. The snake is not known for powerful blows, but precise and deadly ones. Same with the crane. The tiger, with all of its might, does not need to exert itself any more than it has to. This is what martial arts is. This is the essence of martial arts. Whether it is the combat arts of Egypt, or it is the 5 animal styles of Shaolin Kung Fu. Whether it is the weapons, the sais, the butterfly knives, the spear, the broadsword, the Tai Chi sword, which is based almost entirely on these principles I've told you, to the point that most Tai Chi swords aren't even sharp. It is about precision strikes. This is a universal concept in martial arts, which are combat arts. Whether it was the Buddhist monks protecting themselves and their artifacts from bandits with deadly moves, or it was the Nubian warriors that helped make up the Egyptian army and that created Egypt, the Necanites, Upper Egypt. This is what martial arts is. No, I'm not going to sink down to the level of wrestling or ballet or gymnastics or street fighting or boxing. What for? These are sacred, deadly arts. Not some kind of sports competition or some kind of beef on the streets. To each his own. If you're someone who likes to train specifically for the UFC or football or ballet or boxing, bare knuckle boxing, street fighting, fine. But don't mistake that with being the top martial arts. These are combat arts that involve transferable skills. And if you say, well, that's you sound like a psychopath, then you just don't understand. If this is too much for you, you might want to train patty cake, magic cards, playing dolls. If this is too much for you, if these concepts are too complicated for you, maybe you should stick to playing bingo or tic-tac-toe. Martial arts is the thinking man's deadly art, if you will. It's what they are. And every blow is considered in the bigger picture. Most kicks are not deadly, but they set you up for a deadly strike. They knock your opponent off balance, or they knock one opponent back long enough for you to kill another, and then turn and kill the first. Sometimes you do kick someone in the head and they get knocked out, but you don't depend on that. That's madness. But you need to master these skills. Coordinate your strikes and combos, and all the skills, the intelligence associated with martial arts. We'll call it martial arts intelligence. It is among the universal, translatable, transferable, and even communicable and convertible skills that are displayed in sparring. And since you don't just hit anywhere and score a point, You have certain targets: the stomach, the sides, the head, the face. Therefore, there's a certain level of precision, and it is a moving target, just like the targets on the battlefield. The only way, and I've said it many times and I'll say it again, the only way to demonstrate who has the best set of martial arts skills for combat, when it comes to them, we're all our own individual. What works for the guy who's 5'1", it's probably not going to be what works for the guy who's 6'9". They're going to need a different strategy. Whoever's strategy is most effective for their body type is going to show in sparring. If you can outmaneuver that big and strong guy in sparring, then you can almost certainly outmaneuver them on the battlefield. When they reach out to strike, think of it as a spear coming towards you. A sword that you need to block with yours. A knife. Nunchucks flying at you. You dodge, you block, you parry. You counterattack. These are all principles of combat. Why do you think there wasn't some kind of UFC competition in the majority of martial arts? There was, did you see Shaolin monks, tapping people out? No. They would spar. And sometimes they would have routines to spar to help them understand these principles. So to me, it's like, wow, do we really have to go over this? The fact of the matter is, for me to lower myself to competing with someone else's strength, when combat is a universal thing, everyone has their own set of skills. You might have a big, strong, slow guy who expects to die in combat, who's going to try to take as many blows as he can and take as many people with him as he can before he dies. You can't call him the top martial artist. But if a short man who's 5'1", 120 pounds, was to take on a guy who's 6'9", 300 pounds of all muscle, and he would say, you know what, if you're a better martial artist than me, let's duke it out. Almost certainly that bigger guy would win. In a boxing match, they caught a fade. Are you kidding me? Almost certainly that bigger guy would win. But that's not what martial arts is. On the battlefield, that little guy might outmaneuver that big guy, stab him in his fucking side, stab him in his liver by his rib cage, stab him in his kidney, stab him in his fucking eye, his neck. He might outmaneuver and dance around that guy and stab until the guy just collapses. He might bash his head with a club in one blow as he jumps to the side. Bing! That's what martial arts is. And if it came down to self-defense, and that big guy confronted him on the street, he might pull out a knife and stab him to death. It's happened in the streets before. It's happened in prison before. So you need skills for self-defense and natural combat, if you will, or ancient combat. This is what martial arts are. As soon as you switch to guns, you're now talking about shooting and so on. Pretty straightforward. I've explained it on many levels so that you can understand. I don't see how anyone could miss this. I really don't.